Hello, this is Kevin Kelly for the next issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. And our guest this time is my good friend, Paul Saffo. Hey, Paul, would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Sure. I like to call myself a forecaster, but I'm doomed to be called a futurist. I've been here in Silicon Valley looking at technology and its impacts and futures for about 3 decades. So you might say I'm a futurist with a past, who these days is on the faculty at Stanford, where I teach long-range forecasting.
I like that. Okay, futures with the past. Now, the thing about Paul that I've known for many years is that whenever I meet Paul, he has something really cool that I don't know about, and that he's very enthusiastically sharing. And so, Paul, you always have great stuff. Tell me about something that's really cool that's one of your more favorite tools these days.
Sure, but in the interest of disclosure, every time I have something to show you, you always have something to show me. So it's an even trade. I was thinking about a couple of things and things that I actually really use. And one of my favorites is this little itsy bitsy tiny knife. It's called a Boker stub, though they've changed the name to a DM-1 or something. You easily find it. And it's just the cutest little knife. And it's super practical.
Get up a little closer so we can see.
Sure, let's get that right up there.
Yeah, all right, look at that.
Yeah, and a couple of important details. It's a lock back so the blade doesn't close on you while you're working. And on the back side, it has a nice little clip that will clip onto your pocket. And for anybody who wears blue jeans, it fits very nicely into that funny little watch pocket on the right pocket. Most people wonder what the hell that was. That pocket was put there in the 1880s for people's pocket watches. And sort of typical Silicon Valley style, nobody's worn a pocket watch in decades and they still keep the pocket there. This fits in nicely. And what I like about it is it's always with me. It does one thing really well, which is it cuts stuff. And so, when I'm teaching at Stanford, I'm always having to cut down a big roll of paper to stick on the wall. Super sharp, does the trick very nicely. And I don't look like Crocodile Dundee when I'm carrying a knife in my pocket.
Or a nerd like me with my plastic box cutter.
So, box cutters are great, but and this is kind of like a box cutter in the sense that these are about $35.
Uh-huh.
So, if you lose it, it's a little bit of an ouch, but it's not like you're losing the family heirloom that your granddaddy gave you when you were 5 years old. And so, I bought a typical habit of me when I find something I like, I buy a bunch and I give them to friends. And so you can get them in different colors and all sorts of stuff.
I see. Can I see you close one of those to see? Because
Sure.
That's one of my fears of these things is.
Pops up like that.
Right.
And then the side catch is right up there. And all you do is that, and it closes.
Okay. All right.
Couldn't be easier, and super safe. And because the blade's short, but very broad. So when you're working with it, there's no way it's going to wobble. It feels like a big knife.
Yeah. And it looks like it's as sharp as a big knife would be too.
Oh yeah. Well, this Boker is, I believe, the oldest knife maker on the planet. They're, one of the classic German Mittelstand companies that does extraordinary stuff. And so the frame in it is titanium. Our friend Stuart would appreciate that. Uh-huh. And so it ages nicely. It's easy to sharpen, and it actually, I have hardly ever had to sharpen it. It stays super sharp.
Right. Yeah. And I know from carrying a box cutter in my pocket all the time that even though I work at a desk doing, a sit-down job, it's incredible how many times a day when I need to cut something, particularly in the era of Amazon, it's just like I'm using one of this all the time. So this is not just for people who have an outdoor job. This is perfect for people with a sit-down job.
Yeah, no, well, and for me, teaching class, when I'm at Stanford, I got students and I got to cut down a
Yeah.
a 40-inch roll of paper and, try doing that with scissors.
Yeah.
This is super sharp, super fast. And it's definitely kind of an urban thing. You could use it in the wilderness too, of course.
Yeah.
But above all, the other thing I really like is you don't notice it in your pocket, and a knife, if you're going to have a knife, you got to have it with you all the time, because inevitably the one time you don't have it is when you need to cut something. And I find if I'm in the kitchen doing something like, trying to break the seal on a plastic shrink wrap on a bottle of salsa or something, it's easier to just reach in my pocket, grab this, and
Yeah.
and best of all, it gives you use for that fun little pocket on your
Yeah.
Levi's if you wear Levi's.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I and that's another reason to have multiple ones, is you want to have one in each of your pants or your coat or whatever.
Well, and the other thing, you get multiple ones, because what I found is every time I have it out, some friend goes, "That's really cool." And I say, "Here, you take this one. I got another one at home."
I don't suppose it would pass TSA.
I have never tried. My philosophy on airport security is to pass through like smoke and make sure I have absolutely nothing that would be even remotely interesting to them.
Yes. I was coming back from Seattle just last week, and the TSA guy startled me. He says, "Do you have any snacks?" I was like,
And you said, "Are you hungry?"
"Yeah." I was like, what do you want?" And I happened to have a bag of trail mix, and he took it out and put it in the tray. And I, it's like, okay, I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. No, it's.
So, well, that's a great one. So the name of that again is the Boker.
Boker, Boker, with an umlaut over the O.
DM1. And
I think, as I apologize, it's the Boker plus DW-1 now.
DW-1, okay.
But everybody knows it as the Boker stub because it's a little tiny stub of a knife.
Yeah.
This is useless. If you're trying to compensate for male impotence, this would be really useless.
You don't want to get into a knife fight with this.
Well, and your biker friends will just laugh you out of the bar. But if you're a knowledge worker like us, hey.
Yeah. Well, that's a great one, Paul. That's really fantastic. So what's another of your favorite cool tools?
Sure. And I've consciously picked things I really, really actually use every day. So, and it's the cover. This is a cover on a Moleskine. And I realize it doesn't look like much because it's just a cover. You can see where it fits in there. And most importantly, in the back, it has this so you can actually use the elastic on the Moleskine. The background on this is way back in 2009, and I was starting to use more Moleskines for my journals. And what I found is Moleskines were great, but the spine was a little bit cheesy. And by the time you finished filling a Moleskine, the spine was all junked up and didn't look very good. And so, like so here's a random old journal, and I want to put the date on the back. And I like the spine to be in good shape, so I put the date on the back. So I looked around, and I'll save the story. Where you get these is from a company called Gfeller Casemakers, Gfeller, and it's run by a guy named Steve Derricott these days, and they're up in Idaho, and they actually specialize in field gear for scientists or geologists and biologists. So leather belt cases to carry your notebook and pens and stuff, and it's a real fixture of field work. When I was an undergraduate, I had one of the cases. And so I called them up and I said, "Would you make a case for me custom?" And they thought it was a little peculiar, but they're nice people. And so they made it. And now it's a standard in their catalog. And what I love best about it is that the origins of Gfeller, Roy Gfeller was a cowboy saddle maker. And he got into the science stuff in the 1950s when all the geologists were coming up into the look for uranium and the overthrust belt and stuff. And so they have just absolutely impeccable detail in the craftsmanship. And they bring in a special leather from England. And when you first get it, this is a case
Oh,
that I've actually never used. So contrast the colors.
wow.
This is how it comes, and this is what it looks like. This has literally been with me every single day since 2009. And it just gets, more and more lovely in color, and like I was actually writing it. And then when you're done, it just, the Moleskine slips out. Take the Moleskine, it's now nice and clean, put it on my shelf and slip this onto the new one.
So behind you, it looks like there's several shelves of these notebooks. Is that right?
That would be correct. So you in pictures. So let's see here. I can never quite get this right. So they start way back there, and then I switch to this style, and then just out of camera below is a whole other shelf of Moleskines. And I'll never match our pal Stuart.
Yeah.
But when I was in college doing field work, we were required to keep field journals, and the habit started then, and I have continued it ever since.
Just parenthetically, how long does it take you to go through one volume, or to fill up one?
Well, this is volume 104, and it was from December 2008 to March 2009.
So that's about half a year.
Yeah, it's about 6 months. It was a little slower during COVID. You discover all sorts of quirks. Like, I'll take notes when I'm listening to a live lecture, but I don't take notes in my journal when I'm listening to a recorded lecture. I don't know why. I catch down comments and meetings and stuff. And if you want to know more about how I do journals, I can tell you real fast.
Well, yes. One of the questions I have immediately is, how often do you go back and review or look at, and do you have a method for retrieving things?
I do. My rule is put everything in chronological order. So, to pick this random journal, that in the front, I have an index. So what I do during boring meetings when I'm trying to look attentive is I'm actually filling in my index up front. And then for every single page, what I do, this is interesting. So occasionally I fill stuff in. If there's a sequence, so this is page 2 in a longer sequence, but I number all the pages, and every page has a number and a date on it. And what that does, then if I need to put it into a file, I scan it or photocopy and put it in a file. But, our friend Doug Engelbart taught me a long time ago that the most efficient way to index is to allow associative memory to work, which means default is chronological, because then I could say, like I had a question, someone came up and asked me the other day, and I said, well, there's a book you need to read by Elliot Jakes, General Theory of Bureaucracy, not the most exciting title. I said, but I can also get you some notes. A friend of mine who did a lot of work with him, I took about 20 pages of notes over a lunch once, and that lunch was in 1986. And I was able to go, I was working at top of Sand Hill. It's at Sundeck. It was probably around somewhere in the fall. And I was able to go here and open that journal, which I had not opened in a decade, in less than 5 minutes. And then I also keep a paper calendar. So I've got 5 electronic calendars, but I have a paper calendar too. And I put notes in that. And so if I need to find something, I can go at the month of the glance here, go to here. And then if I scan or put a page of this in somewhere, then when I'm looking at it on the scan, I go, oh, okay, that was, for example, let's see. Oh, well, here's one I just opened up to randomly, was a conversation with Larry Brilliant. And it was April 3rd, 2009. And if I had put this into my file, I go, I wonder who else I ran into at that meeting, and I could pull it up.
I'm sure you and Larry were talking about the coming pandemic.
Well, I mean, you've been in those
2009, meetings. I'm sure about it.
In November 2019, I came home to my spouse and I said, it's really exciting news. And she said, what's up? And I said, well, that pandemic that everybody, GBN and Larry Brilliant and all of us have been talking about for a decade or more, Lori Garrett and stuff. A friend just told me it looks like it's arrived and there's something loose in China and it's a good chance it'll turn into a global pandemic. It's fabulous news. And she goes, what? And I said, well, my winter quarter class, Foresight for Innovators, even though they're engineers and Stanford students, I have to remind them of exponential math. And, since Raymond Pearl is not alive to do a demo with fruit flies, well, what could be a better exponential example than a global pandemic? So, you're right. You like me are white and male and heading towards being an elder. And what makes me laugh is all the people who were going around saying, oh, I predicted this. It's like, well, get in line.
Yes.
With the possible exception of climate change. This was the most predicted.
Yeah. I can't even remember how many scenarios I was in where there was a global pandemic. Everybody went through the whole thing.
Right.
It was like, and people were saying, we never thought about this. It's like, what? Everybody thought about it.
Well, but as a fellow futurist, the one part that probably would have been the wildest of wild cards would be that we had a head of state who was determined to do nothing. Or
the whole anti-vax thing.
Right.
I did not see that coming.
Well, the anti-vax was in the wind, but the idea that someone would suppress, anyway, we should stick with gizmos and things. So anyway, Gfeller, the other thing about this is just be careful when you order anything from Gfeller, because like you, Kevin, you will absolutely love his geologist field cases,
yes.
Which unless you're out cracking rocks are absolutely useless, but they're so pretty.
Yeah, I love how it acquires this patina of oils from your hand and everything else. It's just really gorgeous.
And what's amazing about it is, this thing is, it's stitched along the edges there.
Yeah.
And this is what a true craftsman does. The stitching still holds up a decade and a half later.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it.
And I'm sure if you, with loose, you could send it back to them and they would probably repair it.
They absolutely would.
Yeah. So, but just in full disclosures, what are you thinking that might go for these days? Cost?
I haven't checked lately. They've gotten more expensive, and and I worked on the design and stuff, and that's what's unique. I don't get a commission, but he is a good friend. I think they're probably about $70.
Yeah. Okay.
So think of it as the cost of 3 Moleskines.
Right.
But you're going to leave it for your grandchildren.
Right. Right. Well, that's a great one, Paul. Thank you for that. So, how about number 3? What do we have for number 3?
Well, again, in the spirit of something I carry all the time, I pulled up. Here's my particular one. It's a climber's chalk bag. My climbing days are long behind me. I still, as you know, go out in the wilderness a lot, but I use this every day because it's got my dog treats and plastic bags.
And you have a dog, just to be clear.
Yes, I have a dog, and she demands to be walked at least twice a day, and it just slips on my belt and stuff. But so I truly use it every day. But whenever I go hiking, and then as you know, I am involved in search and rescue, I just always have one on my belt because it's a perfect place. Like if you're fiddling with a camera lens, or you got your phone and a water, it's kind of a little temporary office on your belt. And I don't have a specific one to recommend because there are a ton of them. This I forget what company this was, maybe Chenard. Here's a nice colorful one. Uh-huh. If you go to REI, there's a whole, because lots of climbers, lots of different belt bags, and they're like $15, and it gives you a chance. How many people do you know they will buy a carabiner because it looks really pretty, but they don't climb. They have no use for the carabiner, right, but they have it on their pack because they kind of like the carabiner. Well, that's what you use to attach to your belt. Like this one, which I must have, a dozen of these bags I've collected. Here's the little carabiner goes here, it goes on your belt. And this one is interesting because since it's designed to be a chalk bag for climbers, This one has sheepskin on the inside.
Uh-huh.
So if you want cushy sheepskin, you can get that. If you want it without cushy sheepskin, they just have these. And all of them have a closer at the top, so you're not going to drop anything. But I just find it's just the most useful thing. It's, sticking stuff in your pockets when you're hiking doesn't work. And it's a perfect place to just temporarily put stuff, a camera or a smartphone or a bottle of water while you're working with, or a notepad or the like. And, I'm showing my age here, but you remember the book, The Complete Hiker?
Yes.
Colin Fletcher.
Colin Fletcher.
And in the days, and I was a young pup and we sewed our own hiking gear. And he had what he called a backpacker's pocket that he put onto the strap of his backpack that he made. This to me is a much more practical backpacker's pocket.
But you could also attach it to the strap of your backpack if you wanted to.
Or I would put it on the belt. Even this is a little big. You could do it, but there are all sorts of specialty backpacker pockets that you can put on your pocket too.
Yeah, so, that's really great. So a chalker's bag. And
if you search chalk bag at REI, you'll get it. And like I said, you can go for the, sleek, dark black ones, or what's the company that's named after somewhere in the Andes?
Patagonia.
Not Patagonia. It's like Putumayo or something. Anyway, they have these really colorful ones and the like.
Okay. Well, again, thank you.
Good.
So, Paul, those are three great ones. I'm sure you're not going to disappoint with us for the fourth one. Tell us about what that is.
So, it was, you asked the question about first aid kit.
First aid kits.
And so I'm a wilderness EMT, and I and also have taught first aid in the past, and thinking it was a really interesting question. What would you carry as an essential first aid kit? The shortest answer of all is get training. What you carry in your head is more important than what you carry on your person. So it's very much a MacGyver thing. So principles I follow say, first of all, consider what your first aid needs are. If you're going to Everest, you need an expedition kit. And, and you want to talk to your doc about getting some extra meds in it and all that. But if you're not going to Everest, it's like, if you're just, if you're a bicyclist, you probably need a road rash kit, some stuff for blisters and the like, or your hiker. So think about where you'll actually use it, and then what your level of training is. You don't want to carry a stethoscope if you're not, not a paramedic or whatever, because you want to MacGyver it. You want it to be small and sort of like the knife. You want to have it always at arm's reach. So with that in mind, I was thinking, and I will talk about specific to get trained. My advice, my favorite place for training is NOLS. So NOLS.org, National Outdoor Leadership School, and get a wilderness first aid class. That's a short one. Slightly longer is what's called wilderness first responder. And the reason why I put the emphasis on wilderness is not that everybody's going to go hiking in the wilderness. Is the wilderness is defined as anywhere that is more than 1 hour away from definitive treatment. So noting where you and I live, that means that when the next earthquake hits, we will instantly be in the wilderness. And so that you're going to learn more skills from them than from the more typical first aid trainings. I won't mention the companies. The other nice thing about NOLS is they do all their first aid training because they lead trips around the world, and all their guides take their own classes. So you get people teaching the class who have done this extensively. And
this is like an in-person, where you sign up, you find a local NOLS, and you sign up for. And how long is the course? Is it like a day? Or?
Yeah, I mean, a wilderness first aid class, I think, is like a day and a half. The wilderness first responder is 5 days. And the essence, the real secret about emergency response. So like for me as a nationally certified wilderness EMT, and I was on a search and rescue team and stuff, it's most people say, oh, I got to do something. what really the most important skill in an emergency, medical emergency, is assessment. And most people freeze, there's someone hurt and they go, oh, I don't want to touch them. It's like what the class is all about is hands-on experience, assessment, and treatment. And so again, the kit you carry in your head is much more important. So that said, I was thinking about a minimalist kit that, if I'm a bicyclist, I have a road rash kit, because road rash is really minor, but boy, does it hurt.
What would be in a road rash kit, just as an example?
Oh, I would carry, if I had a default, this is like the simplest default kit. Now, I've made my own, but my advice is, start by thinking about buying a standard kit somewhere. But just be careful that they don't put a bunch of junk in it you don't need. So this is like a really easy default kit. It's got some gauze, some 4x4s, and a couple of Band-Aids. And I would keep a piece, a roller with it. That'll pretty much cover anything.
A roller? What do you mean a roller?
What's called Curlix. Let's see here. So a nice little conforming 4-inch stretch gauze, and it's prepackaged. And you go to a place like REI. So if you throw this into this, you've pretty much got a first aid kit.
Okay.
Doesn't take up space. The next step up, the one thing I would consider, given how dark these times are, is a what's called a stop the bleed kit. This is if you end up have the bad fortune of being in a mass casualty incident, somebody shooting people and the like, then you want to carry a tourniquet and a pressure bandage. So this is, I forget whose this is. It's got a hemostatic agent in it that it helps clot, and you put in hold pressure. There are various versions of this. As you can see, it's all nicely sealed up because hopefully you never have to use this.
Right.
Now, the place I would go to.
The second one is called a pressure. What did you call it? A pressure what?
It's a trauma wound dressing.
Okay.
4-inch hemostatic controlled bandage.
Okay.
And it's a specialty thing for very serious bleeds. And it does two things. It applies direct pressure, but it also has a hemostatic control that causes blood to clot and stop. There are all sorts of ways to do this. And these are the classic tourniquets that you see it's got a little windlass on it and the like. This is where training is absolutely essential. If you have one of these in your bag, you might be able to improvise, but I don't recommend that. What I would search is a site. It's stopthebleed.org. One word, stopthebleed.org. They have online training, and it's just focused very simply on, what happens if you're in a situation where somebody's having a serious bleed out, and how do you use the tourniquet and how to use the hemostatic bandage. They have pure online training. They sell it, and it's a nonprofit. They sell a kit for $35 that I've seen. I don't have one because I must have a dozen different first aid kits and I didn't need to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I liked about their kit when I saw it is it's all shrink wrapped in a spot. You can toss it in your car or wherever. Some people, it's depressing to consider that it's small enough they have the kids carry one in their backpack to school.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, these are dark times. So what I like about Stop the Bleed is they're focused on one specific skill. The online class doesn't take long. There are in-person classes being done in communities around the country. So an in-person class, you actually have an experience of applying it to a mannequin and seeing how it works. And also it has the side effect that, all these things is about muscle memory and also getting over the shock of seeing things. And, once you've seen a serious bleed out a couple of times and you get used to it, it's no big deal. But the first time somebody sees a lot of blood, they're going to kind of freeze up. But if you've gone through a training, it's just a couple hours and they show how to simulate all that, then you're going to do much better.
That is a fabulous, fabulous, cool tool. Thank you. That was really, really, really great. I like the idea of taking the online course as a kind of a bare minimum.
And just to summarize it, think about where you're going to be and what you need. Like if you have small kids, boy, I put little Ziplocs with Band-Aids all over the house. And think about what you might run into. And then say, okay, do I have the level of training to do the anticipated? And then say, how do I build a kit that fits that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I mean, and it is first aid, so you do want to have it very accessible. Like I've been changing over the first aid kit in my workshop, which wasn't a zippered bag. Like, no, I don't want it in a zippered bag. I want it sitting on a shelf so I can grab it with one hand.
Yeah. Oh, and the one other detail I forgot is the phrase PPE, personal protective equipment, that you want to make sure with your kit that you have some gloves. So this is some prepackaged, Microflex gloves and a mask. And the old, as the saying goes, no gloves, no goggles, no service. The important thing about this is in search and rescue, rule one is don't become a victim. Nothing screws up a rescue worse than a rescuer becoming a victim. And so you want to make sure that you are safe. Don't be a hero. You don't go into something if it's not safe. And if you go in, make sure you protect yourself first, with a mask and gloves if it's someone you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well put. So that's really great, Paul. Thanks. 4 fantastic, cool tools, stuff I didn't know about. And we have a couple minutes. Do you want to share anything that you're working on or a project that you think people should know about?
Well, I mean, it's that time of year where I'm planning my classes for the next academic year. And so the main class that I teach is in the engineering school of Stanford, ME 297, Foresight for Innovators. And what we do in the class is it teaches forecasting methods and then applies them to a particular problem. And then the students take it out to identifying a potential client with a problem and proposing either a product or a solution or a plan. And I'm try to pick a topic every year that is going to pop. And this year it's going to be the California megadrought. And say, let's look broadly at this. We have a whole bunch of forecasts on the science side, but apropos of what happened with the pandemic, the impact forecast of what it's going to do and how it's going to affect people is going to be full of surprises. So I'm going to push the students to really look into those possibilities and come up with solutions. And they could be, very big solutions or all the way down to personal things. So that's always fun. And, what I love about teaching is it forces me to constantly question all of my assumptions about foresight and foresight methods. And so I'm already discovering coming out of it that this year's evolution of the class is making me toss out a whole bunch of forecasting stuff that I've done in the past.
I'm so intrigued. Just give me one example of something you're tossing out.
I'm really souring on scenarios.
Oh?
And I mean, they have their place. The problem to me in foresight is you have all sorts of people talk about methods. And it always reminds me of, Churchill after he died, they found written in the margins of one of his speeches, speech week year, use Latin and shout. and so someone said, well, we have this method. Well, methods are just heuristics. We can have a longer conversation about this, but as you know, I'm also a man tracking instructor. So I'm a level 2 man tracker, and stuff. And the analog of tracking someone across terrain or looking for a lost person has a backwash into my day job of forecasting. And what it is there is no magic to forecasting. You have a set of tools, and the trick is don't get attached to your tools.
Mm-hmm.
And if the tool's useful, use it. And when the moment the tool ceases to be useful, throw it away and go the next way. And I have also gotten so heartily tired of, I'll stop ranting, but not just yet. What is it about people who feel compelled to write books telling us how to look into the future? I find them pointless and sterile and absolutely useless.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been spending a lot of my time this summer is going back into the deep history of foresight and reading a whole bunch of stuff that nobody has bothered to read in decades and often didn't read to begin with because it was impenetrable.
And are you finding anything useful in those old things?
It's turned me 180 degrees around on how I approach foresight. And I'm, the most fundamental, we dance around the question of why is it that people are interested in the future to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
And why do people find forecasts interesting, helpful, useful, pay money for them, even when most of the time they're completely wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an answer, but it's a longer answer than we can do in this video.
Yeah. Well, Paul, this has really been great. Thank you. We'll list where people can find you if they want to bother you, harass you, stalk you.
Good. And I look forward to the next time I see you, because I can't wait to see what interesting new thing you've come up with.
Yes,
I'm going to have to get.
Right. Well, thank you again. This has really been fabulous. It's been a long time, and I always enjoy hearing what you're interested in, just in general. As I said, even just the foresight stuff. So thank you again for joining us. Until next week, thank you everyone else there who are viewers. This is the end of the show and tell. Thank you. We're glad that you enjoyed this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Just want to remind you that we have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. Please subscribe, comment, like. In addition, this Cool Tools Show and Tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. You can subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to other podcasts if you just wanted to listen. And if you're listening, know that there is a visual version of this on our YouTube channel where we're actually showing the tools, and there's a little bit more of a visual component there. In addition, the same folks that put us, the Cool Tools website out, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short. It's 1 page or less. We recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct, easy to read. You can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring to you the 6 cool things that we have uncovered and want to share. And it's called Recommendo with 1 M, recommendo.com. You'll be able to find it there. It's free. Join 50,000 plus other subscribers every Sunday morning. You'll get it in your email box. And it's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. But we do produce other newsletters as well. One of them is called What's in Your Bag. We have one that goes out to tools and tips for your workshop. So you can get those at our website, and they're also free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that we do have a Patreon, and this podcast and this vidcast are supported by Patreon supporters. The minimum is $1 a month. And for that, you get an email to ask us anything. We'll respond and answer your question if we're able to. There are other higher levels. You can all see those at our Patreon page. And all those links are below right here. So thank you again for being a fan. And we'll keep producing stuff if you enjoy it. Thanks. We are grateful for all our Patreon supporters. And this week's include Randy Fisher, Bob K., Hans Reisbeck, Michael Douglas, Andrew Nepley, Chris Wurstyuk, Dan O'Brien, Michael Jones, Chris Wayland, and Pamela Cooley. We give thanks to each of you and appreciate your support. Thank you.